good start out of that starting box, coming to outer zone 1. Does a good job. Outer zone 1 gets right on his door. For outer zone 2, cuts the line just a little bit, but dives right in there, coming around to this touch and go. Does a nice job of that touch and go and transitions for outer zone 4. It looks like he transitioned a little early. Head into this first outer zone. Does a nice job getting to outer zone 1. Takahashi falls a little bit behind, making his way back into that pocket. Getting a little left at this touch and go, but tries to catch up right at the end. He does a nice job just staying right there with him.
Imamura goes Takahashi. Fukada goes Takahashi. And Yamanaka goes Takahashi. And he's with Freestyle, Lauderdale Racing, and Kenda.
Both heading to this first outer zone with a lot of speed. Goes a lot of angle coming to outer zone 2. Getting a little left behind. Comes around to outer zone 3. Really far behind, trying to catch up. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Head into this first outer zone. A big flick into outer zone 1. Dives a little too, takes a shallow approach, dives a little bit too much, had to drop back. Now he's getting right on his door. Does a good job. Stays right there at his door all the way through that touch and go. And then does even a better job, puts on his, gives him a little love tap right at the end.
One more time. Fukada, one more time. And Yamanaka, one more time.
Around this first outer zone. A nice job deep into outer zone 1. Does a good job in outer zone 2. Comes around to outer zone 3, falling a little bit behind, going off track, trying to catch up around this touch and go, and then just finishes off in outer zone 4. Heading to this first outer zone, a little shallow in outer zone 1. Comes around, does a nice shot in 2. Jason kind of dives in. He almost parks it, but stays with it. Does a great job of that touch and go, staying right there on his door. Comes around to outer zone 4 and gives him a little love tap as they both spin out.
Imamura goes Jason. Fukada, Jason. And next we have car number 774, Hokuto Matsuyama, Kusuka Racing in the lead, and in the chase we have Meguro with Ishii 55X in origin.
Real deep in the second outer zone, losing his bumper, comes around to outer zone 3. Getting a little left behind, there's that touch and go, trying to catch up right there at the end. Heading to this first outer zone. There's a good flick. It's a lot of angle, puts it right there next to him, coming around. This outer zone 3. Using all of that angle, trying to stay with him on this touch and go. Does a good job coming around to outer zone 4.
Imamura, one more time. Fukada, one more time.
Making their way to this outer zone 1. Does a nice job flicking into outer zone 1. Comes around to outer zone 2. Staying right there with him. Trying to dive in on outer zone 3. And he goes off track. And it's throwing him offline. Now he's trying to catch up. And they finish and he spins out again. Matsuyama off his game. They're coming around to this first outer zone 1. Matsuyama does a nice job staying right there. Around to outer zone 3. Matsuyama goes off track just a little bit. Let's see if he can stay with it. Oh,
Matsuyama. Sakata goes. Matsuyama. And Yamanaka goes.
Heading to this first outer zone, doing a lot of speed. With a massive flick into outer zone 1. Chase car is diving, trying to dive in. And outer zone 3. Looks like he's staying right there with him. Come around this touch and go. And gets right in that pocket in outer zone 4. Heading to this first outer zone. It's a nice job getting into outer zone 1. Jerry gets right there on his door for outer zone 2. Give him a chance to transition, dives right in, and then oh no, he spins out! And
Oe. Sakata go Oe. And Yamanaka goes Yutaro Oe.
Making their way to this first outer zone with a big flick. Getting deep in outer zone. Comes around for outer zone 3. Just dives in. Looks like he's going straight to lock though. Loses a little bit of distance between each other. Comes around the touch and go. Sacrifices a little making the way to this first outer zone. Does a nice job getting in outer zone 1. Sabe trying to stay right there with him. Coming around to outer zone 3. Gets right there on his door. And just holding it. Coming around in this touch and go. Does a nice job of that touch and go around outer zone 4. Just stays right there with him the whole time.
Sakata goes Kusaba. Yamanaka goes Kusaba.
Masanori coming in this first outer zone with a lot of angle coming into outer zone 2. Makes his way to outer zone 3. Does a great job in outer zone 3. Does a good job hitting that touch and go. Comes around to outer zone 4. Gets all of outer zone 4. Making their way to this first outer zone. They did a nice job getting to that outer zone 1. Did a good job in outer zone 2. Oh, goes off all the way off track. Oh no. Making their way to this first outer zone. Jake does a good job diving in on him on outer zone 2. Come around outer zone 3. And he just straightens out. And Jake's gonna finish his run. Get some more practice in. It sounds like something ain't right with that car.
Jake Jones. Sakata goes Jake Jones. Yamanaka goes Jake Jones.
Making their way to this first outer zone. Yuma does a nice job. Flick deep into outer zone 1. S does a great job getting right on his door in outer zone 2. Dives back in for outer zone 3. Staying right there with him. Does a good job around this touch and go. With a lot of angle. Comes around for outer zone 4. And stays right there with him. Making their way to outer zone 1. A lot of speed. S does a great job getting into outer zone 1. Ruma staying right there with him. Coming around to outer zone 3. Ruma's getting right on his door, diving right there with him. Making their way to this touch and go. And Ruma just puts it right there.
Yuma. Sakata goes Yuma. Time to get the right side of the bracket started.
They're making their way to this first outer zone. Tenguchi with a big flick in outer zone 1. Comes around outer zone 2. Does a nice job at outer zone 2. Gets right on his door and falls off track just a little bit, falling behind. Coming around to this touch and go. Trying to catch up around for this outer zone 4. Get a clean start making their way to outer zone 1. King Gushi does a nice job getting right there on his door. Leaves him just enough room to transition and gets right there next to him. Staying right there his front tires, making their way to outer zone. This touch and go, does a nice job of the touch and go. And just stays right there in that pocket through outer zone 4.
Fukada goes Gushi. Yamanaka goes Ken Gushi.
BMWs battling each other, coming around to this first outer zone with a big flick into outer zone 1. Misses outer zone 2, comes around to outer zone 3. Staying right there with him through outer zone 3. Does a nice job at touch and go, falling a little bit behind, trying to catch up through outer zone 4. Coming around this first outer zone. Does a nice job getting right there on him for outer zone 2. Falls a little bit behind and wavers a little bit. Comes around to outer zone 3, right there on his door. Falling a little bit behind in this touch and go. But does a good job coming around to outer zone 4 and puts it right there next to his door.
Goes Matsui. Fukada goes Matsui. Yamanaka goes Matsui.
Coming into this first outer zone. Mikey throwing a lot of angle, getting right there on his door in outer zone 2. Makes their way to outer zone 3. Mikey sacrificing a little bit of line. Get right there close to him. Does a nice job of that touch and go. And then Mikey stays right there with him in outer zone 4. Expecting a lot of angle from Mikey. Coming into this first outer zone. It's a lot of angle into outer zone 2. Manoa's doing a great job getting right there into the pocket on outer zone 3. Making their way to this touch and go. Staying right there with him. He comes around to outer zone 4. And Manoa's showing him he's not going anywhere.
Hiroya. Judge Fukada goes Hira. And Judge Kenji Yamanaka goes Hiroya Minoa. Jin Harino with TSA Motorsports Toyo tires.
Coming into this first outer zone, Jin does a nice job staying right there with him on outer zone 2. Has a little waiver coming into outer zone 3. Does a nice job staying right there with Daniel. This touch and go does a good job. Jin has a weird line coming in after that touch and go. Run up for this first outer zone. Daniel doing a nice job staying right there with him. Dives in on and it spins out. Oh no. Jin's gonna finish his run out. It looked like Daniel just dived in a little too hard.
Goes Harino. Fukada goes Harino. And Yamanaka goes Harino.
Making their way to outer zone 1 with a big flick to outer zone 1. Getting right there in the pocket. And outer zone 2. Comes around to outer zone 3. Staying right there with him. Coming around to this touch and go. And transitions to outer zone 4 and puts it right there into that pocket. Making their way to outer zone 1. Does a good job getting into outer zone 1. Goes right there on his door for outer zone 2. Coming around to outer zone 3. Just staying right there in that pocket. Falling a little bit behind on that touch and go. Comes around for outer zone 4. And stays right there.
Yamanaka. Judge Fukada goes Yamanaka. Car number 37. Yuichi Yamashita in the lead. TMS Team 55X. And Daigo Saito in the chase.
Getting right there on his door for outer zone 2. And then falls a little bit behind. Coming to outer zone 3. But shallows up to get right there for this touch and go. Making their way to outer zone 4.
Yamashita with TMS in the chase.
Making their way to this first outer zone. Daiko does a good job with a lot of angle. Going to outer zone 2. Yamashita trying to keep up in outer zone 3. They make their way to the touch and go. Yamashita staying right there with a close transition going to outer zone 4.
Kata goes Yamashita, and Kenji Yamanaka goes Koichi Yamashita.
Coming into this first outer zone, Fausto does a good job with a lot of angle. Harry does a good job coming around, trying to catch up to this outer zone, and goes off track just a little bit. Now trying to play catch up, coming around to outer zone 4.
With Fat 5, or no, 5X tires, and Fausto in the chase.
Coming around, Fausto does a nice job just being nice and conservative coming around to outer zone 3, giving them enough space, trying to play catch-up goal for this touch and go as they make their way to outer zone 4. Oh no!
Goes Fausto. Fukada goes Fausto, and Yamanaka goes Fausto.
Come around this first outer zone. Echo does a nice job getting right there in the pocket in outer zone 2. Give it a little love tap. Transition for outer zone 3. Gets right back into the pocket. Staying together for this touch and go. Comes around to outer zone 4. Oh no!
And we have Echo Gal in the lead and Hamada in the chase. This is the second round.
Making their way to this first outer zone. Hamada being nice and safe, keeping some distance. Coming around to outer zone 3, trying to get in that pocket. Doing a nice job, nice controlled job. Coming around this touch and go. He finishes off. He has a nice conservative run.
Judge Imamura goes Hamada. Judge Fukada goes Hamada. Judge Yamanaka goes Hamada. And we're back. G-Shock presents Formula Drift Japan.
They're making their way to this first outer zone. Jason getting right there on his door for round. Going around outer zone 2, comes outer zone 3, gets right there and stays with him. Making their way to this touch and go. He gives him a little love tap and he spins. Oh no!
Touching it. He just switched a little harder than Takahashi.
Making their way to outer zone 1. Jason does a big entry into outer zone 1, comes around to outer zone 2. Takahashi trying to catch back up. Oh! Something happened with Jason Ye's car. And Takahashi is going to finish out his run. That's very unfortunate for Jason Ye.
Fukada goes Takahashi. Yamanaka goes Takahashi.
They're making their way to outer zone 1, gaining a lot of speed. Has a good flick into outer zone 1, comes around to outer zone 2. Staying right there, getting into outer zone 3. Making their way to the touch and go. Gets left behind just a little bit. And then gains it back into outer zone 4. They're making their way to outer zone 1 with a good entry into that first outer zone. Luciano getting right there, falls a little bit behind in outer zone 2, trying to catch up through outer zone 3. Sits there right in that pocket and makes their way to his touch and go. Does a good flick going around to outer zone 4 and just stays right there next to him.
Matsuyama. Fukada, Matsuyama, and Yamanaka go Matsuyama. So
they're making their way to this first outer zone with a big flick into outer zone 1. Masanori getting right there on his door. Does a nice close transition into outer zone 3. Staying right there with him. Making their way to the touch and go. Does a good job getting around to outer zone 4. Just stays right there to let them know. Making their way to outer zone 1. Kohashi does a nice job getting to outer zone 1, but does even a better job getting right there on his door by Kusaba. Comes around to outer zone 3 and is not going anywhere. Comes around to his touch and go. Gives him just enough space to transition into outer zone 4 and puts it right on his door.
One more time. Fukada. One more time. Yamanaka. One more time.
They're making their way to outer zone 1. Getting a lot of speed coming into outer zone 1. Masanori gets right there on his door for outer zone 2. Gives him just enough room to transition and dives back into outer zone 3. Is not going anywhere as they make their way to this touch and go. Does a great job of that touch and go rounding and gets right back in his door in outer zone 4. Making their way to outer zone 1. Kohashi does a nice job getting a good flick. Kusaba gets right on his door and it looks like he hit him and had to back off. Transitions to outer zone 3 and Kusaba goes off track just a little bit, slowing him down. He's trying to catch up to Kohashi and then he ended up having to straighten.
Fukada goes Kohashi and Yamanaka goes Kohashi.
Making their way to outer zone 1. Does a nice flick into outer zone 1 and Ruma stays right there and gets right next to him on his door for outer zone 2. Just enough room to transition for outer zone 3. He's a little shallow. Coming to that touch and go. Transitions to outer zone 4 and he gets right back into that pocket. They're headed to this first outer zone. Ruma does a nice job flipping it into outer zone 1. Jake gets right there on his door and is not going anywhere. Dives into this, gives him a little love tap, and then for that outer zone 3, looks like it threw Ruma off his line just a little bit, but they make their way to that touch and go in the outer zone 4.
Fukada goes Ryuma. Yamanaka goes Ryuma. Matsui with Matsumoto Kiyoshi M2 Evolution.
Making their way to outer zone 1. She does a nice job getting to outer zone 1 and 2. Matsu dives in that third outer zone, comes around, trying to stay within through this touch and go. Cuts a little bit of the line, but then gets right back into that pocket. Making their way to outer zone 1. Tenguchi stays right there with him coming around to outer zone 3. Tenguchi stays right next to him. Gives him a little love tap as they make their way to that touch and go. Comes around for outer zone 4 and he gets right there back next to him.
Kingushi. Fukada, Kingushi. Yamanaka, Kingushi.
Making their way to this first outer zone. With a big flick in outer zone 1. Jin does a nice job diving in. Gets right there on his door. Goes a little bit off track, falling behind, and then dives back into outer zone 3. And he still goes off track just again, falling behind around this touch and go, trying to catch up into outer zone 4. And he gets right there next to him out in outer zone 4. Making their way to outer zone 1. Does a nice job throwing in outer zone 1. And Manoa gets right there on his door. In outer zone 2, just enough room to transition to outer zone 3 and dives back in. Trying to give him a little love tap. Coming around to the touch and go. Manoa's doing a great job, comes around to outer zone 4 and gets right back into his door.
Fukada, Minoa, and Judge Yamanaka, Minoa.
They're making their way to outer zone 1. Does a nice job flicking into outer zone 1. Yamashita gets right on his door and giving him a little love tap. Into outer zone 2, comes around to outer zone 3. Gets right there on his door, coming around to this touch and go. Does a nice job flicking her around to outer zone 4 and just stays right there into that pocket. They're headed to this first outer zone. Mao dives right into his door on that second outer zone, comes around to outer zone 3 and is not going anywhere. Coming to this touch and go. Falls a little bit behind, but transitions and gets right back into that pocket in outer zone 4.
Fukada, one more time. And Yamanaka, one more time.
Making their way to outer zone 1. Mao does a good job entering the outer zone 1. Yamashita getting right there on his door, trying to dive right after this transition. Does a good job. It's a little shallow on his angle, but comes around to his touch and go. Does a good job of that touch and go. And then, oh, Yamashita looks like he went a couple tires off track. Oh no. Making their way to outer zone 1. Yamashita does a big entry. Oh, Mayo goes and gives him a low love tap and pushes Yamashita off track.
Yeah, because it wasn't there beforehand either.
He was on the break.
One more time. Judge Fukada, one more time. Judge Yamanaka, one more time. And a byron for car number 37, Koichi Yamashita, TMS Racing. 5.5X tires.
This does give him the opportunity to have a nice practice lap after fixing whatever was wrong with his car. Making their way to outer zone 1. Fossil does a nice job getting to outer zone 1. Hamada does a good job getting around, diving into this third outside zone. Finds the pocket and sticks with it. Comes around to this touch and go. With a big flick in that touch and go. Comes around to outer zone 4. And he just sits right there next to him. They're making their way to this first outer zone. Does a nice job entering outer zone 1. Fossil gets right there and is diving in. Comes around to this touch or outer zone 3. Fossil does a nice job staying right there, willing to touch the line just a little bit, making their way to this touch and go. Transitions to outer zone 3. And he stays right there next to him.
Judge Fukada goes Hamada, and Judge Yamanaka goes Hamada. And in the lead and in the chase, we'll have car number 774.
Back in action, making their way to that first outer zone. Does a good job in outer zone 2. Marciano gets right next to him. That outer zone 3 gets ready for the touch and go. Goes a lot of angle after that touch and go. Makes their way and puts it in his door on outer zone 4. Heading to outer zone 1. Takahashi does a good job getting right there on him in that outer zone 2. Dives in on outer zone 3. Gets right next to him on his door. Making his way to his touch and go. Going a lot of angle after that touch and go. Gets right back to his door in outer zone 4.
Takahashi, Fukada, Takahashi, Yamanaka.
Teammates battling it out as they enter this first outer zone. Masanori does a good job and gets right there in that pocket, leaving him in just enough room to transition and dives back in right there onto his door, making their way around to the touch and go. With a nice flick into that outer zone 4, and Masanori just stays right there next to him, making their way into outer zone 1. Masanori with a big flick into outside zone 1. Ruma gets right there, dives in on this outer zone 3, making their way to this touch and go. The big flick coming around to that outer zone 4, and Ruma gets right there and gives him a little low.
Kohashi, Fukada, Kohashi, Judge Yamanaka, Kohashi, Hiroya Minoa, Cusco Racing.
The big flick into that first outer zone. Manoa just staying right there, giving him enough space, transition and starts to dive in. He gets right on his door, giving him a little love tap in outer zone 3. Coming around to this touch and go. There's a nice job coming around, and Manoa just putting it right there. Making their way to outer zone 1. Manoa with a big flick, and Kengushi gets right there on his door in outer zone 2. Right on his bumper during that transition. Kengushi falls back a little bit because he went off track. And then comes around with his touch and go. Trying to catch back up. And Kengushi gets in that pocket without.
Manoa, Judge Fukada, Manoa, and Judge Yamanaka, Hiroya Minoa. Up next, we got Hamada in the lead, Hashilan Racing, and Yamashita in the chase with TMS. 5-5 each time.
Yamashita falling a little bit behind over the second outer zone, trying to catch up to this outer zone 3, making their way to the touch and go. Going a lot of angle, coming around to outer zone 4. He stays right there, looks like making their way to this first outer zone. There's a big flick. Hamada gets right on his door in outer zone 2. Turns around for outer zone 3. Dives back in. Is a little shallow on angle. Gets trying to stay with him on the touch and go. Transitions a little late and then falls a little bit behind into that outer zone 4.
Judge Fukada, Yamashita, and Judge Yamanaka, Yamashita.
Making their way to outer zone 1. Masanori gets right in on his door for outer zone 2. Comes around for outer zone 3. Through the smoke. Gets right there in the pocket on his door. Coming around to the touch and go. Going a lot of angle transitions. And stays right there next to him. Making their way to outer zone 1. Masanori with a good flick. Takahashi right there with him, turning through this outer zone 3. Masanori goes a little bit off track and wavers, making their way to that touch and go. Does a nice job of that touch and go. Comes around outer zone 4.
Takahashi, Fukada, Takahashi, and Judge Yamanaka, Takahashi.
We have a clean start as they head to outer zone 1. Manoa with a big flick in outer zone 1. Yamashita straightens up. As Manoa finishes out his lead run. Here's Manoa giving us a show on his bye run. With a big flick in outer zone 1 with a lot of angle in outer zone 2. Comes around to outer zone 3. With a lot of speed coming into outer zone 4.
Humpy 10 speed?
Hope you get around quite quick though.
What?
Making their way to this first outer zone. Takahashi is throwing a good flick into that outer zone 1. Manoa gets right there, dives into outer zone 3, right on his door. Coming around to this touch and go. Does a good job. Gets right back on his door in outer zone 4. Making their way to outer zone 1. Manoa with a big flick. Takahashi getting right there. Dives in on his door, just enough room to transition, comes back around, goes off track just a little bit, and loses all that momentum, trying to catch back up. This touch and go.
And coming in third, we have Yamashita. Winner for Formula Drift, Hiroya Minoa. Takahashi Kazumi coming in second place.